Neil, the end of the world is coming.
Yes.
Again.
It's been a while. It's been a few months now before the end of the world's coming.
Yeah, and now it's coming. Is it tomorrow?
I don't know. There's a couple of conflicting stories on when the world is going to end.
It's the super blue moon, isn't it? Or blood moon. I get these kind of mixed up, but apparently that's what's going to happen. So we're going to look at that today, and actually this is going to be an end of the world special because the world is going nuts, as we discovered when we looked at the internet. And if you just Google blood moon or super blue moon and Jesus, all in the same search term, you're going to see a lot of nonsense coming up, and not just Jesus as well. I mean, a lot of people think when these celestial phenomena happen, something significant that applies to them and their belief system is going on. I mean, this always happens, Neil, doesn't it?
It does, and we'll explain, basically, because we're not scientists, exactly why that's nonsense.
Yeah, and I'm sure we will get some scientific clarification on this at some point. I've got a little bit here which I can add to the melting pot here. And we're going to start off with, this comes from the Metro, which is a UK paper. The end of the world is going to kick off on March 19th this year, religious people reckon. So yes, we also have March 19th as the end of the world. So if this one coming up doesn't happen, there's always this one, right? So it's figured that the rapture is going to happen on March 19th. Now, much of this is based on the Jubilee prophecies of Rabbi Judah ben Samuel, a 12th century mystic who wrote prophecies about the messianic end times. Now, Samuel wrote, "When the Ottomans conquer Jerusalem, they will rule over Jerusalem for 8 jubilees. Afterwards, Jerusalem will become no man's land for 1 jubilee, and then in the 9th jubilee, it will once again come back into the possession of the Jewish nation, which would signify the beginning of the messianic end time."
And this is obviously why Pence and his gang managed to persuade Trump to do the old embassy to Jerusalem to try to fulfill this.
Yes, a lot
prophecy.
of conspiracy theorists are saying this. They're pointing to Donald Trump's recognition of Jerusalem, and that this is the definite capital. We recognize no favoritism here, but we are recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And all this is pointing to that, and that this must mean that the rapture is coming soon, because everything's been put into place. And effectively, Donald Trump has put one of the last puzzle pieces into place by doing this.
But apart from, they have to do some mental gymnastics to get the dates to fit as usual.
Yes, it's all very confusing, but I'm sure they'll backflip a bit and twist and turn and then make it all more or less fit. And then they'll be raptured up into heaven, and hopefully there'll be lots of riches there and other conservative-minded people waiting for them.
And is anyone else maybe wondering, hoping that that may be true?
Oh, well, I'd be glad to get rid of them, to be honest, yeah.
But don't hold your breath.
So it goes on to say the world will end in 2018, supposedly because the rabbi predicted that the Turks would rule Jerusalem for 8 jubilees, which was accurate.
Oh, they weren't really Turks. But was it specifically the Turks that ruled it for 18 years? I'm not sure.
Oh,
someone needs to correct me on that.
I see what you mean. But he also predicted that the messianic end times would begin 1 jubilee, that is 50 years after Jerusalem returned to Jewish rule. This is very complicated. There's a lot of quite tortured maths involved, I agree, as usual with end-of-the-world prophecies. And we should point out here that no credible authority, religious or otherwise, has backed the supposed deadline for the end times.
But it won't stop a load of YouTubers jumping all over it.
Oh, yeah. And what happens when it doesn't happen?
Well, they'll just wait for the next one. They'll conveniently not mention it. It'll disappear into history. And then they'll be doing another video about when the world's going to end in a few months' time, I guess.
I wonder if they will do what the Jehovah's Witnesses do, because they predicted the end of the world about 8 times, even published it in their Watchtower magazines and everything. And then when the end of the world didn't happen, they then blamed all the followers for misinterpreting it.
Well, that's a double whammy. You blame your own followers. Lovely.
Well, why not?
Why not, indeed. I guess the only thing you can say is it's certainly not good for the world that there's war in the Middle East and Trump's trying to provoke the Muslim world by moving Jerusalem, but that's no indication that the world is going to end this week.
No, but there's a lot of violence going on because of what he did, and he knew that would happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the people pulling his strings knew that would happen. And we move on to something very similar, as we have mentioned before, the super blue blood red moon. Does that make sense?
There's a lot of bees.
Yes, is a sign of the apocalypse, and this comes from the Express co-UK, which is a tabloid, so we take this with a pinch of salt. The super blue blood moon that will appear at the end of the month is a sign the apocalypse is nigh and Jesus Christ will return, according to a bizarre theory. The lunar phenomenon will take place on January 31st, that's tomorrow, and the next one will not be until 2028. Now, Christian conspiracy theorists are claiming that as a result of the spectacular lunar display, Christ will appear on Earth and herald in the end of days. That was a film, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. Followers of Christ point to a verse in Luke 21, 25 to 26, which says the end is near when these signs appear. Now, this is the problem about signs. You can interpret anything as a sign, if you're clever enough.
So what are the signs?
Well, according to the verse, now Christ says, and there will be signs in sun and moon and stars, and on the earth distress of nations in perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves, people fainting with fear and with foreboding of what is coming on in the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Now that's kind of vague.
It is kind of vague. I just want to point out that this is the Express in the UK.
Yes.
This is a Brexit newspaper. So I'm going to do a little bit of politics here just for a second.
Sure.
They love these sort of stories because they distract their readers from what's really going on in Britain rather than paying attention to what's happening in the world. So they love these stories, so I'll just say that one.
Explains a lot.
But this makes me laugh because you will have people jumping all over this, and there are many cultures, many people, even non-religious people who call themselves spiritual or whatever, see the blood red moon and think it signifies something. It's pretty simple what it signifies. It signifies a partial eclipse of the moon where the shadow of the earth doesn't quite reach the moon, but because the sun is coming through our atmosphere, the red light from our atmosphere is being portrayed on the moon. So it is just a partial eclipse. So that's the fact of the matter. This isn't anything special. It's been going on forever. Well, for 4.5 billion years since we had a moon, I guess.
Yes.
And it doesn't signify anything. It won't mean you're going to be lucky, you're going to die, you're going to be healthy, you're going to be ill.
It's only
you're going to
significant
get money.
if you say it's going to be significant.
I'm sure you can find some correlation if you want to something that's happened in your life. It's very easy to do.
Confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias, but as we say, causation doesn't equal correlation, or the other way around. Correlation doesn't equal causation.
I'm sure there are tribes somewhere maybe in Australia, maybe in South America, that we know nothing about, who regard that moon as something else. That's our deity's way of saying that we need to eat more red fruit. Or something. It's whatever you decide it is. There's nothing written across the moon that everyone can read and say,
But it's funny, it's just strange that people pull out a Bible verse from Luke 21, which is saying, and there will be signs of the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the earth's distress of the nations in perplexity. Because this has been happening regularly. The blood moon isn't something that is just like every 100 years or 2,000 years or something. It's something that happens regularly.
Yeah.
It's been happening regularly since the Bible was written.
Yeah, so what about those last ones?
Yeah, so all those hundreds of other times it happened. I don't know how many it is, but it's at least hundreds of other times it's happened. Why are we worrying about this one? Nothing happened then.
It's always about the politics and whatever's going on at the time.
Yeah, if you can twist the narrative to fit your belief system.
And then when that doesn't actually fit, you say, okay, well, that wasn't quite it. It'll be the next one. And it's a good way to sell books as well. So I think there's a lot to do it.
I mean, the Earth isn't, nothing's going to happen. Well, actually, the one thing you can guarantee happening on February the 1st, after the Earth has ended, apparently, is that there'll be another batshit crazy theory about how the Earth's going to end. That's the only thing you can guarantee.
But human beings have been looking up into the sky for hundreds of thousands of years and thinking, I don't understand what's going on there. Something must be up.
Yeah,
and they're still doing it.
I guess it's just proof that maybe you shouldn't use a 2,000-year-old book to try to figure out your astronomy.
Yes.
There's been plenty of books written that will explain exactly why this happened. And I'll tell you what, there's probably a planetarium somewhere near you that you can go and visit and find out about why it really happens.
Yeah.
Rather than relying on a 2,000-year-old book.
But it's more exciting to think that your viewpoint is going to be validated and all the people you don't like are going to be trampled underfoot by God.
It's gruesome, but more fun, I guess, for some people.
It goes on to say, despite the name, a blue moon is actually white, but it is a total eclipse that involves the second full moon in a month. So rare is a blue moon that the phenomenon has not occurred for more than 150 years, since 1866.
Yeah, so I haven't looked this up, but it's a combination apparently of a blue moon and a blood moon, so it's going to be a blood moon and then a blue moon at the same time.
Yes, it's coinciding of two events. Yeah, we're going to go into that a little bit more later on, but first of all, I think I've got to play something for you that I found. This is a prophecy alert. This is by a YouTuber called Paul Begley, Pastor Paul Begley. Now, he's a pastor from Indiana, and he has a show about current events and how they relate to the Bible. And so this has just come out, and this is prophecy alert, super blue moon lunar eclipse.
There's something very important about this day coming up. I'm giving you a heads up on this. I want you to prophetically prepare for this. But there is something about this upcoming super blue moon. And you can see it over North America. You also will be able to see this lunar eclipse if you're in Hawaii or if you're in North America. You will be able to see it. It's a super blue moon lunar eclipse coming January 31st, 2018. I believe it prophetically. There is something going to take place. It has to do with Israel. It has to do with America. Tied together, it is a Jewish festival day, a little known festival day, not celebrated by a lot of people. But right now, planting trees in Israel, of course, is a big deal, okay, especially ever since the Jews came back to the Holy Land. So we're going to keep a close eye. I want you to mark it down. January 31st, super blue moon lunar eclipse.
Okay, so that's what he thinks. He thinks something's going to happen. It's something to do with Israel. And of course, being a Christian, it's all about Christianity. So, and there's loads of these things, Neil. That's just one of the most funny ones.
And they're all obsessed with Israel, aren't they? They're all obsessed with Israel and Jerusalem.
Yeah, because when Israel is sorted out and given back to the Christians, when that happens, Christ will return, and all the good little Christians and Trump voters will be sucked up into heaven where you get your mansion and Cadillac and whatever.
Where's the proof that the Christians are going to get it back? I don't see any evidence of that.
Oh no, none whatsoever.
I see plenty of evidence of Israel arming up to the teeth to make sure no one takes it off.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what they think is going to happen. So, okay, now the blood moon prophecy. Now that was a series of beliefs, and this is promoted by Minister John Hagee, and he talks about something called a tetrad, which is 4 consecutive lunar eclipses, which coincide on Jewish holidays. And so he sees this as a sign of the beginning of the end times, and that's what started a lot of this. And then you have all these YouTubers and podcasters, conspiracy theorists, who always looking at moons and tetrads and all that and thinking, okay, this is it. And of course it never really happens. And even on the CBN website. Now, CBN, of course, is the Christian Broadcasting Network, which is an American Christian-oriented television network. That's the one founded by Pat Robertson. What is a super blue moon, and does it have spiritual, prophetic significance? Now,
no. There you go. Can we stop the conversation?
On to the next one.
We have to keep talking.
Well, they are very careful about it. They're not quite as batshit crazy as some of these other ones, but they do say that blood moons have been thought to have had spiritual significance and to be part of prophecies. Some also believe that they have special significance in relation to Israel. Now, notice how they put it's been thought to have, and some say. So they're covering themselves at least.
I see they didn't mention any word of evidence or proof or...
No, in case it doesn't happen. So they've been around long enough to know how to word it.
Yeah.
ChristianHeadlines.com report that Rabbi Yosef Berger, the rabbi of King David's tomb on Mount Zion, told Breaking Israel News the super blue blood moon is significant with world events, citing U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement of plans to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and recognize the city as the capital of Israel.
It's always... It comes back to Trump so often at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm just going to have to play you another clip of something I found on the internet. And this is Donald Trump was born on the blood moon.
A blood moon, lunar eclipse, is just about to happen as Donald Trump is born. So going back to exactly when he was born, looking at his certificate, he was born at 10:54 a.m. in the morning on June 14, 1946. Now, on the Earth, and the blood moon has just been seen in Israel. On the very day, at the very time of Donald Trump's birth, there was a blood red moon over Israel.
Okay, so that's just another one of these nutcases. I don't know where he's coming from, but it's amazing how the person that they have voted for all figures into biblical prophecy. And
if you're having to quote, well, that's basically astrology of some description, isn't it? Where the moon's and that was when you were born. I mean, if you're having to use that as an evidence of anything, I'd try not to swear here.
I can bleep it out.
You're a special type of person that maybe needs to go back to school or college.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. We'll have to ask. We know some psychotherapists and psychologists. We can ask them. What's going on in their head. Perhaps it'll be for another show. But I wanted to get this right, Neil. So I went to space.com, and of course it has something about the blue moon, and it sets the record straight. It says a blue moon is when two full moons happen at the same calendar month. Lunar eclipses occur when the moon passes into Earth's shadow, and supermoons happen when the moon's perigee, its closest approach to Earth in a single orbit, coincides with a full moon. In this case, the supermoon also happens to be the day of the lunar eclipse. Now, I'm sure that these conspiracy theorists, they've looked at this and they've gone, oh, a coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidences. Of course, that means some entity somewhere is orchestrating something with great significance, which applies to me and my cronies.
Let's put it simple. The moon goes around the Earth casts a shadow on the moon.
Yeah.
And this happens occasionally. Sometimes the Earth is closer to the moon, sometimes it's a little bit further away.
Yeah.
And these things just go on, and that's that. They don't signify anything. You get a good picture though. If you get a clear night, do look at the supermoon and the blood moon and try to get some pictures of it through a telescope or something.
It'll make great wallpaper for your PC.
Absolutely.
And then don't worry any more about it than that.
Absolutely.
But I honestly think there's something in our DNA going back some odd 7 million years that hominids have been on the Earth, where we've gazed up into the sky and been terrified of changes, things we don't understand.
Yeah.
And applying agency to it, applying significance to it. And there's something still trapped in our DNA that comes out.
We desperately want to make correlation between two things, even if they have nothing to do with each other. Our brain is desperately trying to do it.
Yeah. We seek out patterns, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Pattern and significance. Well, I thought it was appropriate to end the show on an interesting article from usnews.com. Religion needs a savior. Now, just basically, it's saying that most experts say that religion isn't exactly the best thing for the world. In a recent Best Countries survey of more than 21,000 people from all regions of the world, the majority of respondents identified religion as the primary source of global conflict today. Spiritual beliefs create an inherent us versus them scenario. I agree with that. And we have a quote here from Sam Harris. Now, Sam Harris, of course, is the atheist author. He's described as one of the four horsemen of the new atheism. He wrote books like The End of Faith and The Moral Landscape. And he says, when societies shatter, they generally shatter along tribal lines. People are seeing themselves as irretrievably different from their neighbors.
I think it's just plainly obvious that religion is the biggest danger in the world right now to the world. And it always goes down tribal lines. I mean, you can look in any country that's having problems at the moment, generally down religious tribal lines.
As we looked at last week, that problem with the family who the mother and father who kept all their kids, all 13 of them, whatever it was, in the house and abused them and wouldn't let them go outside, and that turned out to be religiously motivated.
Yeah, and he goes on to say, the divisions created by religion are deeper and potentially more harmful than those formed through other aspects of identity, such as race, nationality and political affiliations, because they confront individuals with different opinions on the ultimate purpose of life. And more than 80% of those surveyed said that religious beliefs guided a person's behaviour. So, I mean, whether you're religious or not, if we can get past this tribalism of it and just see each other as human beings and one species, we can get rid of a lot of this this trouble in the world.
I mean, you just look at Christianity alone. It started off as the main church was the Catholic Church, and that split off into the Protestant Church, and each one of those split off into denominations and sects and all kinds of things. And that's, again, it's tribalism. We've got it right. You don't have it right.
Whereas if we just look at the evidence and follow the evidence, decide as a nation where we want to go, and that's normally to be more peaceful, have less deaths, less violence, less crime, we'll start to work together.
Hopefully.
So later on, in the article, it goes to say, estimates from Pew Research predict that the worldwide population of religious unaffiliated people will shrink from about 16% in 2010 to 13% in 2050. And it says about Muslims, the share of Muslims is predicted to grow from 23% to 30%. I don't recognise these figures, weirdly enough, because people unaffiliated and non-religious people are growing.
Yeah.
So I don't really get where he's coming from, because saying the Muslim population is predicted to grow from 23% to 30%.
Perhaps he's being a bit careful, a bit conservative.
I don't know. I think that's just people in those countries are predicted to grow. They're totally dismissing the fact that there are a ton of people in Muslim countries who are losing their religion every day.
Oh yeah, I mean, wasn't it Richard Dawkins who said that the number one country that downloads his book, I think it's the God Delusion, was from Arabic countries.
Yeah, and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So it always annoys me when you see these sort of figures saying that the share of Muslims is predicted to grow, because you're just associating people from that part of the world that must be Muslims. And there's Christians in those countries.
Yes.
There's true. Christians in those countries, there's atheists in those countries, and there's a ton of people losing their religion in those countries.
And don't forget, we have what they call Generation Z at the moment. That's kids born from 1999 onwards. They are almost overwhelmingly agnostic or no belief.
Absolutely.
And
So you're just completely
ignoring
that, aren't you?
Yeah. So experts agree that finding a human connection at some level can help build empathy and bridge the gap between conflicting ideologies and identities. I think that's the important thing.
That is the important thing, and you have to keep saying that when you have hate and that between tribes, whether it be religious or whatever, hate is a learned concept, it's a learned behaviour.
Oh, yeah.
So any learned behaviour you can unlearn, so you can learn to be more empathetic to each other and have love for other people easily. So there's hope. This isn't going to go this way, it's going to go our way. We're going to get more empathetic as a species, we're going to help each other out more, and we'll start to fix problems like global warming, for example.
Yeah. So that's it. I think that's all we can say at the moment. And if we're not here next week, we know that something happened on the 31st, and they were right.
But if we are here, we'll be reporting on Rocket Man.
Oh yes, because February 3rd, is it?
Yes, Saturday, February the 3rd. Rocket Man is going to be risking his life to try to prove whether the Earth is a sphere or not.
Yeah, he's built a rocket, strapped himself inside, and he's going to go up and take GoPro images.
I don't know, but
he never said he was, did he? So no. we just have to take his word for it.
And will he even admit that he saw a curvature on the Earth? We don't know, but we'll be reporting on that next week.
Oh, I can't wait. Okay, then. See you next week. And remember, everyone, if you like what you hear, please give us a big like, please share, and don't forget, if you want to support the show, we are on Patreon as well. So links to all of that will be in the description below, and we will see you next week.